Hi. I just wanted to make an intro to this video. And I just want to say that basically if you want to understand what's behind synchronicities, like synchronistic events and things, this is the mechanics of it. If you're kind of like on the fence and you didn't believe in like synchronicity or in visualization, helping you to achieve your dreams and things like that, then this video will definitely change your mind and there won't be any more doubt, because this is something I wrote 20 years ago, and in the time since, the synchronicity stuff has really come out. But back in the day, I was a science researcher. I was a brain and behavior researcher. I did evolutionary psychology. I taught experimental methodology at Emory University, and I left school because I didn't believe what they were saying anymore. That there's no way the brain could work like they were saying it should work, like anyone was. So there was no place else I could go to finish my PhD, and I spent 4 years there, trying to find a way. But I just didn't believe in the ideas anymore. So I had to leave, and for me the main idea was truth. I wasn't there for a career or something related to something I wanted other than meaning and truth, which I've always put above everything else. And it didn't really become apparent how important that would be until later in life. And now I realize I was not just onto something, but this is pretty much the key to everything. So when you finish watching this video, you're going to have like this solid foundation for understanding synchronicity and why you, right there, you have this God power in you, because you are a manifestation of the Creator. And this is not conjecture, it's science. And I have predicted so many things with my ideas. When I mentioned in some comment on YouTube that I had predicted the 20 years of intellectual history of the progress of brain science and consciousness studies with my theories from 20, 30 years ago, somebody sarcastically said, well, why don't you predict the next 20 years? And I can. That's the thing. I really can do that. But until you learn this first stuff, I can't tell you about those other things. It's going to sound like a bunch of crazy shit. So once you get done, this is not like any other video. Oh shit. This is not like any other video you have seen on YouTube. Seriously. A lot of people want to portray that or say that, but I'm here to tell you I have the evidence. Here is the place that I presented it, Tucson conference in 2002. And then I went to Skövde, Sweden before that in 2001, where I presented 4 papers and 1 summary paper, so it was actually a total of 5, but really 4 basic papers, outlining this, how there's a law behind everything that happens in the world, and that I mentioned in this video all of the evidence that supports this singular law behind everything. And once you understand and believe in that law, there is no limit to what you can do, honestly. There seriously is no limit. There's no limit to the diseases you can cure, because it turns on the immune system of the brain. It protects you from deadly things, whether they be memes or what you conceive of in the past, or what we've conceived of in the past as like spiritual entities like demons and things like that. I know this sounds so crazy, but the reason it's not crazy is very well explained in there. It has to do with the symbolic nature of things and what they really are. Just like science tells us what things really are, and in the past they were symbolic and thought of as scary or supernatural. But like it has been said many times before, I'm sure you've all heard this, any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic to people that do not understand it. So what I'm going to do is tell you how this magic works. It's not really magic, and I'm going to tell you why religions formed and why they fight, why they shouldn't. It pretty much explains everything. So I know I'm promising a lot, but I can definitely deliver and back it up. I invented a new experimental methodology that has turned out to be some of the most staggeringly significant findings ever in the history of science. I used to teach experimental methodology. It's how I came up with this hybrid method, which I first presented here and at the one before this. My actual abstract is right here. It was Thursday, April 11th. This is page 19 of the original program from the conference. And I'm right here. I used to be male. I was Stephen Romer back then. Concrete evidence that consciousness originates in some factor beyond physics and known natural laws, received meaning as a lens to see this universal and primary force at work. I was presenting my new methodology at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So that's what that is. And then I'm going to be reading the actual paper. Honestly, this is embarrassing, but I live in my car right now, and so my stuff is in storage. I was like, I just moved out to California because there were some researchers out here working on some things I wanted to talk to. One of them was Kip Thorne. He's working on black holes. They're trying to find a mechanism for all this stuff, so it seemed obvious that it had to be like a black hole related thing. And that's the thing about these theories, is they'll tell you where to look to find discoveries too. You'll know where the greatest discoveries are going to be found and what they're going to kind of look like before you find them. It's kind of on the order of Democritus calling the atom 2,000 years ago or whatever. 1,000 or however far back it was, I can't remember now. But yeah, or like Leonardo da Vinci drawing helicopters or something, you know. So this explains how that works too, and you'll be able to use it to move towards like whatever field you're in. It won't just help you with your synchronicities and your vision boards. It'll help you understand how powerful those things actually are. So this is the paper I wrote that I presented in Tucson. And then later, a researcher at Tucson, which once I get done with this video, you'll realize it wasn't a coincidence, although it'll seem like almost uncannily too good to be true, maybe. But I'll show you the power of it. And that is, there was a researcher at the University of Arizona at Tucson, the same place I presented these results, who's working in a related field. He wrote a book called Super Synchronicity, and in that book is a couple of years later, after I was there presenting this method, he uses this method in his book, does what I say is that like it should take the number of elements that are events that combine into a super synchronicity. The more elements, the more unlikely, and then calculate using a computer how unlikely those things would be. And you can, even a rough estimate will give you, even if you don't have to be exact, because the numbers will be so astronomical as you put these things together in time, then you'll realize how absolutely staggeringly unlikely they were. And he did that. He doesn't cite me, and I'm not so sure that he knew about my paper. I like to think he didn't, but it's pretty suspicious that I presented it at the exact university that he is at, you know what I mean? So even if he didn't see it, people probably talked about it there. Who knows? You know, it's like, but anyway, he did that. He had the grant money, and he's got a position and stuff, and I left school because I'm looking at the big picture. But this happened in a number of elements in this paper. Like almost every sentence, there's now a researcher working on what I say in this paper. And the sentences I use are only to give you a little bit of background for this methodology. But I wrote a book also that goes much deeper into it. But I wouldn't even recommend reading it. It's super hard to read. I mean, you could read and see what I'm saying. That obviously I had these ideas behind. But since then, I've been looking for mechanisms. And then now there's been a lot of researchers that are supporting what I say, and so I'm rewriting it, putting their stuff into it, because, you know, I really like that they're doing it, because all I really care about is the truth. And so since Gary Schwartz wrote that book, I'm happy. He did a lot of work, you know, like I would have had to have done. So I realize I can't do it alone. And that's where you come in, because I need your help too. I need you to tell people about my papers and my work so that I can not have to live in my car. It's a nice car. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I need a space to work and everything. I had an office for a while, but they closed the office and I ran out of money. So it was like $200 a month, and it was like a co-working membership. It was really cool. So if you can, I really appreciate it if you like, subscribe. I promise to do more videos. I'm going to get the 4 papers that I presented in 2001 and present those. I may talk about my book. There are some things I don't like about my book now. It's been 20 years. I mean, really, but and I can tell you why and what those things are. Things like that. So anyway, on to the paper reading, and I promise you, your life is about to change forever. And for the better. Because everyone wonders what life's all about and where it's headed. Thanks. And the only reason I'm wearing this mask, it is to emphasize that, you know, we're in a time of pandemic and everything, and the restrictions have really caused problems for me. But also because I'm transgender, and even though I'm transgender, I still need to shave, and I actually have freaking whiskers. See, and that's all I'm willing to show. I just don't want to look at it. I'm looking at the monitor when I'm talking, obviously. It's like, it's still disturbing to me because I am transgender. And in the video, I'll show you, like, these girls are running past. I started running again recently, and so I look at them running by, and it's like, they have like the coolest female bodies and I don't. It's like, that's kind of sad, but I don't care about all that. This, you're gonna love this. That's the girls that are in the video. So if there's any guys out there and you like girls, there's gonna be hot girls. They're definitely sweating. They're running outside and it's hot. Everybody loves hot girls, right? They're super hot. Poor things. But anyway, just watch the video. Thank you very much. Okay, today I'm going to read my paper that I wrote back in 2002 that I presented at the Tour de Science of Consciousness Convention in Tucson in April of 2002. Abstract number 289. Before that, in 2001, in Skövde, Sweden, I had presented 4 papers and then a paper summarizing all of the 4 that go into greater details of the background of this paper. But this one is pretty key. I mean, I can definitely get the idea across with just this one paper if you really think about everything I say is and expand it into the meaning that it requires you to expand it into. Because as Immanuel Kant said back in the 1700s, late 1700s, he said that things only have meaning insofar as they relate to knowledge a person already possesses. So, given that, just keep that in mind. I'm going to try to expand on some of these things, but definitely if you have any questions, ask in the questions section, because it's hard for me to tell how much people know, because I've thought about this stuff for so many decades. But I could definitely answer your questions. I'm really good at that. So, anyway, here we go. The paper, of course, concrete evidence that consciousness originates in some factor beyond physics and known natural laws. Perceive meaning as a lens to see this universal and primary force. So it's kind of like when people were looking for the Higgs boson in physics, this would be like the thing that binds pretty much everything together, all human experience and life together, and the universe, and physics, everything. So it is the overall organizing principle. And then you see the echoes of it in the Logos echo and in the features of physics and things like that everywhere. So it's like when an author writes a book, their personality is threaded through it, their way of singing and stuff. And so the universe is kind of like that. And it's like that in a lot of ways because just like with natural selection, we call it natural selection. It's not really. It's just that we couldn't see what was doing the selecting. And I'll talk about that in this too. But what selected out the universe is the same thing that selects out words out of an alphabet for the work of an author in a book. So like when you want to write a story that's coherent and exciting and helps people see things in a new way, people love that. They love reading things that have a twist ending, you know, things like that are exciting, on the edge of their seat. Is it going to be successful or not? All that kind of stuff. So, this is how the universe is constructed. It's exactly like that. Not exactly, because our language is symbolic of what happened in the universe. And this is the logos echo thing here, is that it's an echo of this larger language that we call the universe. And evolution is an echo of that other evolution. It's like evolution echoes boom, universe, and then our planet in evolution, and then in our minds with words over a single lifetime, as we learn and grow, is like an internal evolution of thought. And a lot of our metaphors reflect those things, like thought evolution, or you can really see how his thought evolved. We talk about the gravity of meaning, and that's because there's actual real relationships. In the natural universe, gravity is symbolic of what we would call meaning in our internal universe, or like survival over time in the natural world. Things like that. But really, when we say survival, that's kind of like an egotistical way of looking at it. I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of religions talk about getting rid of our drives and our self-referential view of things as sin. Of course, the Buddhists call it ego, and then like in other religions, they will just call it sin. But it really is looking at the same thing from other directions. In like Islam, they don't want to make symbols of things, because the symbols are not the things. They're trying to hold open the door, and so we don't get involved in our personal symbols. Kind of like the blind man and the elephant, where they think one part of the elephant is the be-all, end-all of the path or symbol of existence, you know. So I just started up again. There was a noisy truck near me. But anyway, I will start reading this now, and hopefully it's going to help you in your life to understand these things and understand life in general. So this first off is going to be I think this is the paper I handed out right at the poster. And so it says, consciousness can best be described as a time machine. Consciousness serves to bring things together across time and space to create meaning. And so we understand that really what's happening in all of our experience is that we're like surviving and creating meaning out of things. So there's people running all through the park here. I just went running myself, but that's really cool because I just took up running again. It's getting really nice out. I need to figure out a way to keep these pages from going back to shut. Okay. And just zoom in on it so we can see better. And then I'll go like this. So our memories bring things from the past together with things about the present in order for us to perceive meaning for things extending into the future. Now, just granted, I wrote this back in the 2000 or whatever, and then I finally was able to get accepted into one of these conferences in 2001. But I've been reading about these things as far back as the 90s. I sent a paper to Brain and Cognition in 1994 about the missing dark matter of the mind, and they said there's not enough research. So that's why I'm reading this, is that since then, almost every sentence in here has a researcher now who spent their career in the 20 years since I wrote this, spent their career investigating what I said was the case, what I predicted, and has found a lot of evidence for that. So like the first one, there's now a book out called The Brain is a Time Machine, and this is something I tried to tell people and nobody was getting it, and finally they did. It's very important to understand that if you understand like what is happening when we look into a brain, because we're using the apparatus for understanding the outside world, and then we look into a brain, it's a special case. we have to understand how symbolic the things in the brain are. They're not exactly what we see, they're symbolic. So underlying everything that I say is that the universe is fundamentally symbolic. It's like the primary law of information is meaning, and we experience it as consciousness. So let me continue. You should read the book The Brain is a Time Machine, although some of my earlier papers in my book describe it much better. So you can see it because everything about how we interact with the world is separated in time and space. So when we look out and see light reflecting off a tree, that tree is separated from us in both time and space. And the way to conceptualize it is that it takes time for the light to reach our eye, so we're seeing the tree backward in time as well as far away in space. And it would take us time to move towards it in order to touch that tree, although we know we could move towards it because of the light reaching our eye. So that thing, if that became our purpose and meaning, then it would just be a matter of time before we reached it, even though we could see the meaning of the tree that we wanted to make contact with to build a tree house or get fruit or whatever the heck we wanted to do. So this is like a prototype for like exactly how the universe works and life too, but you won't know it unless you understand that meaning is the most important thing in the universe. So to continue, our memories bring things from the past together with things about the present in order for us to perceive meaning for things extending into the future or across the spaces of the past. So we can also look into the past and see meaning there. We connect the dots and realize that we're moving towards something that we didn't even understand we were moving towards, because there are higher meanings that we don't necessarily immediately see because of all the constraints and exigencies and patterns of needing to survive in the world around us. I see this when I see synchronicities happen around people that they don't even notice because they're on a schedule, they're busy, they're trying to get to work, they're getting ready, they have to go to the store, blah, 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 blah. And so they're all looking at their own personal meanings, and they're not understanding that there are higher meanings that are built into the universe that we were meant to see and read and follow, and that those might actually be, and actually they are, I can prove it, are what dictate who or what survives into the future. So it's pretty important for the survival of humanity. It has things to do with disease. Like since there's a logos echo of forms, until we solve the problem of the meme viruses that are destructive, the things that get in our head that are destructive from the symbols, until we solve that problem, we don't really have a lot of, it's like we're looking at an instrument panel. If we solve that problem in one area, then it becomes solvable in all of these other levels. So if we solve the problem of the cancer of ego, so to speak, and the cancer of the destructive memes, by understanding how memes work and how they can fool us, then eventually we'll be able to solve disease and cancer by death. And obviously, in the long run, we'd be able to solve the problem of death in general, because right now it serves a purpose because of how humans look at the world. And that same girl just came by again, which I can't believe. She's like running super long. It's like the third time. So anyway, the binding problem of consciousness studies arises because of our limited past evolutionary worldview applied to brain tissue, which I just talked about. Meaning is the instantaneous nexus of large volumes of continuous data into a point where the data can be organized and mixed and matched to create something new or pull out important universal information. And of course, that sentence, there's a guy, Tonini, in Wisconsin, who is working on this concept of phi, which is the instantaneous nexus of information, which is, he said, interrelated information, but it has to be like transcendent of time and space for it to be meaningful. So he gets part of the idea there. So like I said, there's another sentence, another researcher. Let's continue. Consciousness, that's too far ahead. Consciousness is a place where new connections between things can be discerned or created. Consciousness is the God of our brains, the unity of meaning beyond space-time. And that's like how people conceptualize God in the past, or gods with an S, Like the god of thunder would be the unity or personality of meaning behind all the thunder. It was an angry god kind of a thing. And you can see how it's kind of projecting the human level meanings, where the Logos Echo says that there are universal level meanings, and then there are human level meanings, and then there are internal meanings that we have with language and stuff. So it echoes. So by understanding the echo, you can like avoid the pitfalls of the symbols. So it's like the way through the wilderness, like a stairway. Stairway is a great symbol of it. So, and there's going to be lots of levels. I mean, if you look around enough, there's infinite levels, but usually with a single pattern, there's only like 6 or 7. But if you look around the universe, there are so many levels of patterns like that they echo at lots of different levels. And then it depends on how you want to interpret them according to the basic principles, which is like meaning and unity. Well, we can see that in the smallest particles that make things up and stuff like that, that there's a myriad manifestations made up of all these similar small particles and stuff like that. So, but let me continue. It's consciousness is the God of our brains, the unity of meaning beyond space-time in our brains, seeking to become one with the God of the universe, also a unity of meaning, and also thinking. Like the universe obviously then would have the same characteristics as us, but just on a higher level that would be very difficult for us to understand if we didn't understand our own thinking and how that works. So, now there's a girl in blue. What is with all the girls running? I don't know. So let's see. Meaning is the option of how. So, with the God of the universe also meaning that we learn about in religions, but then science took over from that, and it is getting all of the unifying principles together. That's why we keep trying to define a grand unifying theory in science, but you can't with just one thing like that. You've got to like look at everything together, not just science, because there's things science can't do with information. It's very important to understand that, and I'll get to more of that later. But meaning is the apprehension of, but science is absolutely necessary. It's like going to save us, basically. But so meaning is the apprehension of a higher order to things beyond the data contained in the present experience, an order that requires the confluence of many lines of information. That's pretty easy to see, I think, but I will just be explicit, and that is like a tree. The meaning of a tree is how it is related to all the other things we know. We use it as a metaphor, which relates it on an information level to a lot of other things because of its configuration, matching a lot of things that enable us to then easily imagine other things that are constructed like that. But also, a tree has a lot of other meanings, like we build houses from it, which is poetic when you consider that the tree is a model of the universe that we live in. And it also matches the pattern of a single life, and it matches so many things that it's really a nexus of a lot of different kinds of information. We can eat fruit from it, birds nest in it, you can climb it. It grows towards the sun, which is another beautiful metaphor. Has roots in the dark underground that soak up water and needs water to live, which is another good metaphor. Water is a metaphor for other things. So it's like all these things tend to be interrelated in our right brain. We call them nonverbal just because we can't easily put them into words, but poets can, because they can tap into their right brains more, so to speak. But so anyway, I just wanted to be explicit about that what meaning is. It's the apprehension of a higher order of things beyond the data contained in the present experience of the pixels we're looking at, the immediate value to us, all that kind of stuff, the widely spread out in time and space meanings. So really, if you look at every single thing and then you explode it as if it were a model of the universe, like a big bang on it, like you big bang on it. I mean, that's going to be something I'm going to say a lot now these days. Big bang on that symbol, and you will see that it is a model of the universe. Big bang on this other thing, and you realize if you follow that, you can get to all of these ideas of the universe and stuff too, because the universe being an internally recursive holographic information structure makes it so that you can't help but learn by learning about any path or thing. And reading stories, you learn about a great many things, not just the story. Because you're sharing a brain with somebody else, so you become like parallel processors. Which is what we are. We're the parallel processors of the thoughts of the creator. So I'll talk more about that later too. Meaning is the appearance of higher order things beyond the data contained in the present experience, an order that requires the confluence of many lines of information. This is neatly symbolized in the process of science, where science is symbolic. Everything is symbolic too, and that's confusing, because there's what it means to us in our life and to live it, and then there's the symbolic value of it. So we have to always keep that in mind. Everything is symbolic. Everything can be read, and it is indicating other things than what it looks like in its functions on the surface. Everything, every single thing is like that. That's why this is so valuable too, because once you understand that, then it's very easy to create. It's very easy to understand where civilization is going and what we need to do to be successful. It's like basically the key to every single thing, like everything. So people are always like, well, what does this have to do with me? Well, it has pretty much every fucking thing to do with you, because everybody likes success. Everybody likes to understand things. And if we want to move to the next level as humans, then we need to know this stuff. So if we want to survive. So many disparate experiments are unified and tied together in powerful ways with unifying theories. If we broaden our view of what consciousness is doing in the brain, seemingly connecting the states of our brain through time to bring forth unity and meaning in our knowledge so that we may be more creative and effective, we see that brains are an echo of the larger reality out there, and the entire universe takes on greater coherence. In fact, this is the only way that the internal and external information of human history and experience can coherently be assembled into one. There is no other way everything fits together. It fits one way, so that's really cool. It's like seeing the elephant, and it stops all argument. So that's what I'm doing too. So much as the theory of evolution unified vast amounts of biological data, learning about consciousness and brains gives us information about how the universe is constructed itself. There is a fundamental distributed unity to things, as in the symmetry and salience of natural law. An atom of gold in one location is the same as an atom of gold in another location. They might actually be the same atom seen over and over. And the reason I bring that up is later I found out that one of the early theorists, I'm trying to remember what his name was now. Dang it. Not Dirac, but Maxwell or somebody. No, that wasn't it. Anyway, a famous physicist thought that all electrons were the same electron. And when I found that out, I was like, yeah, I can totally see that. But the thing is, our ideas of what's same and separate are separated in space-time. So even if it was the same electron and it was separated in space-time, it would truly be separate, because that's what space-time is. It's like an interface that separates out things so we can see them and work with them. So that's how humans are one too. I know humans are all like one huge consciousness that's connected into the universal consciousness. But we are also separate beings. So it's the same thing, but you can see why you would think that, and why I thought like this atom of gold in one location is the same as the atom of gold in another location. And that's the way you should say it. They are the same. Consciousness puts together the information in our brains because that has powerful survival and adaptive value. And it has this survival and adaptive value, as I said previously, because I just try to tap the screen to turn the page. This is not Kindle. I'm turning the pages with my hand. All right. Because it serves to bring about this eventual ultimate real unity of the organism engaged in the process of unification right now with that ultimate source of all meaning that exists beyond time or up ahead in the future that created us. Since we tend to perceive ourselves as moving only one way in time, or most people do. I don't. I've actually seen effects before causes. But that's a whole other story. Okay. This idea is also reflected in the Omega point of Teilhard de Chardin, Tipler's anthropic cosmology, and it's definitely related to Sheldrake's formative causation, where the universe itself kind of has a memory and thinks, and it really does. Consciousness is like all of that and more. I just kind of pointed to those things along the way, but the one case, and now there's that guy, what the frick is his name? He wrote Biocentrism. I think it's Laszlo or something. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but he wrote Biocentrism, and I was like, yeah, read my 2003 book much? It's basically the same stuff I wrote in my book. It's the same thing that he writes in Biocentrism, only I actually do experiments and show that it's true by showing the Logos Echo that humans echo the universe, that humans can have synchronistic events happen around us that relate to our own personal meanings, showing that meaning is primary and organizes things in the actual material world, and that being pieces or parts of this universal consciousness in each of us, we also do that. So now everyone's talking about synchronicity and flow and all that kind of stuff, and it's stuff that I just completely wrote about and thought about so long ago. It's just one piece of the puzzle. You got to look at everything together. So, to continue, the one case I can think of where there was a species on Earth which did not continue to unify and was a threat to those who held the potential to unify information in the future was dinosaurs. They do not exist anymore for a good reason. This is a key point. In fact, all of evolution, even the selection of our very specific natural laws out of infinite possibility, right after the Big Bang, served this unity now rising our reigns and also threaded throughout the universe. So also we can logically see what existed before the universe, and that is infinite possibility. It doesn't matter if you posit previous universes, because when they crunch down out of all of that into the infinite unity, they would still exist as bubbles within ultimate unity, and that this overarching higher consciousness would see the meaning of all of these experiments of universes. So it's still infinite possibility. You just have to go back further. So it's infinite possibility and then selection out of that. And we can tell that probability is primary because we know by the universe existing that it had to have a probability of coming into existence. So logically, we know that it was possible because it's sitting here in front of us. We're living in it. We're still figuring out exactly what it is, but it's here. So we know it's possible beyond a shadow of a doubt. Therefore, the possibility that the universe would exist, we know for sure beyond a shadow of a doubt, existed before the universe actually existed. So if the universe is selected out of other possibilities that we can imagine, especially now with science, then we know that it was selected for. And then we look at the Logos Echo and we know that our narrow electromagnetic spectrum was selected out of all of the spectrum of electromagnetism for our immediate survival needs. And so we know that by extrapolating with this Logos Echo that the survival needs of the universe were selected out of all the possibilities, and the physicists, now they're running together. The physicists know this because they can tell that if the balance of charges wasn't exactly what it is, or the forces, or charges too, I guess, but that things would fly apart and wouldn't stay together. So, to continue, there's so many mountains of evidence for this. I don't see why people don't understand that meaning is the key thing of the entire universe. In fact, all of evolution and even the selection of our very specific natural laws out of infinite possibility right after the Big Bang served the unity now arising in our brains and also threaded throughout the universe, as evidenced by the symmetry of natural law and the regularity of cosmic and biological forms, and the very intelligibility of the principles of the universe. If we think of the state of things before the Big Bang, there was ultimate unity and infinite possibility, more like everything is one than nothing. That's what I wanted to get through, is like it's not ex nihilo. There's no such thing as ex nihilo. Because if there's a possibility for anything, there's a possibility for everything rather than nothing. If you can take my meaning, if you understand the mechanics of that. But I could go into more about that, but I need to keep going here. The one constraint seems to have been that the would eventually exist and that we would find unity again, the leaking of infinite possibility in ordered form to sustain us back into the universe through the unity in our minds. Our brains have become complex enough to allow us to predict things very well in the world and to understand things by selecting out the unity in things happening out there reflected within our consciousness. The patterns that connect things through time and space. The unity that works for us, that allows us to survive, is greater and greater truth. When I say truth, I mean this meaning coming from the unity of ideas, like you find in science, where you unify the forces, or you do experiments and find out that space and time is actually one thing. By evidence, that's what I mean by truth. Whereas like when Donald Hoffman says truth, he means raw reality, more along the lines of what I would think of as infinite possibility, which would be complete chaos of popping in and out of existence in an infinite without time and space. So he's being kind of sensational by saying we cannot see the truth and stuff, and provocative. But that's what I mean by the truth. It's like different definitions, and definitions are super duper important. It's easier with science to get the definitions and vocabulary and grammar right of the universe, and I believe that is the true function of science. And so I try to do that with words too, do a science of what they're meaning, like, which means distill out from reality what the real meaning of the word truth should be. And I think that Donald Hoffman is misusing the term truth. But I think the point he is making emotionally is very important. So I never really critiqued him on that. Because I think it gets people thinking in the right direction and stuff. But anyway, we pull into existence what is needed to construct the existence of consciousness and unity in the future universe. All things were theoretically possible at the time of the Big Bang. Or like I said, at the no time point, because any previous universes and all possibilities would be included in no time. So even if you think there were previous universes, that statement still holds as true. If we think the state of things before the Big Bang, there was only all things were theoretically possible. The one constraint seems to have been that we would eventually exist. Our brains have become complex enough to now allow us to predict things very well in the world and to understand things by selecting out the unity in things happening out there reflected within our consciousness. The patterns that connect things through time and space. Of course, sometimes I don't know if I'm being like pedantic or overly explicit, but it can't hurt. Our DNA is like that. Obviously, our DNA is distilled out from many lifetimes. So when I talked about the natural laws in my book, I said they're like the DNA of the universe, what appeared to be distilled out through many universes. But anyway, the unity that works for us, that seems to be what separates each one of the echoes, is like different DNA type viewpoints of this progression of information. We can live in the vacuum of space, and men have walked on the moon because we have unified things into greater and greater meaningful truths. And meaningfulness means that the potential to affect us in the long run, be relevant. We even split and fused atoms, the power that lights the sun, which is a really big symbol because the sun is a symbol of meaning giving life. We see power in apprehending, because I said gravity is meaning, remember? You get enough meaning together and it actually starts giving life itself. We see power in apprehending the truth of the universe we live in, power to overcome all other life forms on Earth and send our species into the future. The future is the purpose of all this activity, and that future demands unity and knowledge. Each stage in the march of life available before us in the world, from single cells to the complex structures of our own brains, had a definite direction. All life has moved towards truth, towards creative adaptation, to overcome the dangerous niches of lesser truths. A unifying government echoes this theme in politics, but can become a false idol if we do not see the larger pattern from which this government idea itself arises, which is why freedom is important. Because if you start setting laws and stuff, you have to be really careful, because you have to understand that there are higher laws. And so I think that's why we say things like, in God we trust, and that type of thing when we talk about freedom, is because what we're really saying is in higher meaning we trust, or in the universe. If you just want to look at it that way, then you don't have to get all discombobulated, because we tend to think of our parents as like symbols of God or something, or whatever. It was just kind of an egotistical way of looking at things. What you need to do is look at those things and not see the things in themselves, but see the meaning. So a unifying government echoes this theme in politics, but can become a false idol if we do not see the larger pattern from which this government idea itself arises. The forms of unity echo everywhere. That's why some people worshipped the sun. It is both functional, and the structure and function of it contains important metaphorical and allegorical information about life and the role of consciousness in shaping the universe and arising in the universe. All that from the sun, if you look at it metaphorically and allegorically, it has a lot more information than science can tell us. It transcends all the boundaries between the divisions, the divided upness. And when you transcend the boundaries, you get two things: meaning and creativity, which is basic, and eternity. All of those features are features of God. So it's almost like the promise of doing that in the long run is immortality, ultimate creativity, ultimate unity, which of course will bring peace. I mean, everything about it, it's like everything we've ever dreamed of. All I have to do is follow this pattern. Definitely we're still in the process of that. So, metaphor is a quality of the universe, of the construction of the universe itself, which brains in their writing merely echo via the logos echo nested information quality of the universe, nested like those Russian dolls, which are also, or the layers of an onion. When we peruse the religious writings of the past, we begin to see that religions everywhere find a universal coherence in these principles of a future unity directing life and events from heaven using symbols. Heaven just means beyond time and space, coming together with us now and in the future. Our bodies, with their collections of cells, are the same way, an echo of the structure of the universe, which echoes everywhere in the forms of things take. That's really cool too, because you can see the logos echo a lot, like in the single cell that starts a human body, and then it starts dividing and expands exponentially, which is like the inflationary period after the Big Bang. But the expansion of a growing body, it differentiates eventually just by where the cells find themselves. They have to differentiate, but at their center, they're all the same thing. And we should look at that metaphorically and allegorically as something to read that tells us something, and not just the structure and function. You see what I mean? So it's like information. So God is an artist, yes. The universe is an artist. Ultimate meaning is. Symbols may not be what they represent exactly, but that certainly is a darn good way of saying the importance of unity to life in a way that is functional and would not be found until we are ready to see it. So, when symbols are not directly what they represent, like the number, say the number 5, it's not 5 dots, it's a 5. It's not what it represents. So symbols are all like that. But if you take a bunch of symbols and put them together and start processing them, what do you get? The most perfect representation of motion and everything else in the universe, no less. It's like, why don't we see that as a lesson? The lesson of mathematics cannot be seen unless you let go of ego. So that's what I wanted to say about that. That can really tell us about symbols in general. So that's what I mean by it's a darn good way of seeing the importance of unity. I don't think a lot of people understand what I'm saying. They just can't see what I'm saying. But anyway, that's why I like to unpack these things. It's taken me like 15 minutes a page so far, but I don't know how I'm going to get through this. These are God's hieroglyphics. God is not only omniscient, but he is a master of beauty, a poet. The unity of meaning in these things highlights this beauty. Since everything in the universe seems to have happened just right, to have brought us to this point where we can be conscious of all these things right back to the beginning of time and the beginning of the universe, it is true to say that the consciousness where it all comes together again was the object of the outcome of all of these events leading up until the present when this can happen. A sort of getting back to the original unity and possibility that existed before the Big Bang using our minds, with the only constraint being that we need to continue to exist, thus no fundamental incoherent changes in natural laws. Things have to fit together. We are becoming familiar with what is outside the universe and existed before and beyond the universe of our normal senses with science and information. Space-time is the playpen for the birth of this unity into a coherence that also allows it to exist. The universe has been preparing for this for billions of years and could not exist or be perceived if this process was not taking place. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that logically, there's no way that we could exist as we do with meaning if this wasn't how it was happening. That's why I said it only fits together one way. So there's literally no other way that this could all fit together. So this, there's a lot of people that say they have a theory of everything, and it's more like they know there is a theory of everything and they're trying to find the right symbols, but what it actually is a quality between symbols at different levels, and so they'd never see it. So the physicists think they're going to find the God particle in a little particle when it's actually, that is just a symbol. What they're doing in the real world is a symbol, because the real world is symbolic inherently. It's to be read like a book as well as to be figured out and lived in. It has this dual nature. And that's why we think we have brain lateralization as the species that's going to eventually understand this. It's why we have computers now too. And I can talk more about computers because that's something I've thought a lot more about over the last few years. I know what computers are for and what they symbolize. It's one of the reasons why there is this dual nature to things. So, to continue on with this paper from 20 years ago, God is born into this universe and people become prime movers, God's hand. Another quality of unity we find in the information in the universe is that it is timeless. To the extent that we align ourselves with this unity, we are also immortal and increasingly creative. It is something in the future we have been aspiring to and leads to an uncanny coherence to things in nature and in past civilizations. Consciousness may have only seen, I talk about past civilizations more in my other papers and in my book. I talk a lot about it and about epistemology, how we come about getting knowledge. But this is just one paper. Consciousness may have only seen its first glimmerings in relatively recent times, giving rise to this disparity between religious and geological or astronomical estimates of the age of the universe. One looks from one end of creation and the unity of consciousness, and the other one is looking at it in the physical sense, the reflective symbolic sense. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, that they may both actually be right, but one is like we were able to see the meaning enough to have the unified religion, versus the actual age of the unified universe itself that came about before the life echoed within it. But anyway, let's pull this up a little bit more. There we go. And the other looks from the other end of time, of the Big Bang, but really they're the same, just in different ways. One is the spirit or ghost, and the other one is the body, like, kind of. This explains the form of the Ouroboros, the snake with its tail in its mouth, since it seems like consciousness bootstrapped itself into existence in us from beyond time if you remove the limited perspective that space-time imparts. In my book, I talk about how it's the singularities, like black holes, are computers that compute the patterns of information in universes and allow them to exist. So it's pretty important. But anyway, like I said, I'm going to write more about that later. But I did say that in my earlier books. I thought I'd mention it. So like the universe is thinking, and it's like a computer in ways that the brain is a computer in some ways, or that we see it as one when we look at it. It's just another aspect of us. Consciousness is a light in a cave that guides us to our destiny. It looks like we bootstrapped ourselves into existence from beyond time if you remove the limited perspective that space-time imparts. It is a limit. It's like a separating limit, but it's a teaching machine. That's what I call it in my book. Quite obviously a teaching machine. Consciousness is a light in a cave that guides us to our destiny, the unity behind the universe that we reach in our future as life forms, draws all life out of the void. Consciousness is the source of meaning in us and the connecting principle for all events in the universe. Consciousness is why science works at all. The fact that we can form theories at all is the quality of the universe itself. It's part of the information laws of the universe, originating in the idea of unity. And meaning is the basic law. Meaning is a basic principle of the construction of the universe and life. The echoed metaphors that result from space-time distribution of unity allow our brains to operate like the principle of the universe. I mean, just like the principles of the universe, because they are echoes of the universe itself. Our brains are. Much as language is an echo of what is going on in our own more complex brains. Like, we say a picture is worth 1,000 words because we understand the inherent limitations of words. But then a moving picture that is three-dimensional would take like 1,000 pictures, and we see that symbolized perfectly by a film strip stopping on frames, or the frame rate of a computer in a video game or something. It's very important to understand that, because that's how we get the meaning. And this is all set up, the way reality actually works is set up for us to follow the meaning of it, so that we can have real life and continue into the future, and overcome all obstacles to our existence. So the connecting principle of being born in us connects all these things and allows us to see beauty and the meaning in the allegories and metaphors of nature. You can go through each one of them, like you can the film one. The one with like record albums being black with vibrations in them, and a big spiral that you follow from it, is like what I've been trying to find with life, because a spiral is a good symbol of life, because anywhere you look on a spiral, if you focus too closely, you just see parallel lines, and like the Logos Echo. But if you pan back far enough and look at a big enough picture, and which I mean by that I mean encompass enough information, it's a little model of life. And then as you play your record and hear the stories sung on the record in beauty, in the vibrations, in the spirals that we exist in, then you can follow along and eventually see the meaning in the larger patterns, because you see that you've traveled through all of the meanings by the end. And once you do, you realize it's all one meaning. So there's everything is symbolic like that, and you can unpack all of the symbolic nature of it, especially with science now. And the other thing that's cool is what they would use diamond needles on records and to play the music that means so much to us. And of course, a diamond is something that happens to carbon under intense temperatures and pressures. So it's a great symbol of like someone like me, or like anyone who is a poet or really smart and brings meaning into the world. So the consciousness being born in man spreads out from the future into the past and provides a new way to see events and things in our past. Makes new meaning everywhere. From the religions of the world and the artifacts of ancient civilizations to the shape of trees, animals, antlers, the solar system itself, the unity that, because the planets revolve around the sun. The unity, and if you go into the sun, of course you're going to die because it's a symbol. And what you need to do is look at it and understand the meaning. Everywhere there's things like that. It's like, if you don't get the meaning, then you're going to kill yourself if you just go think the symbol is the most important thing. Or you're going to argue and smack each other over the head with your canes if you're blind about elephants. But anyway, and our feelings are symbols too. All of our feelings are. So like, lust, if you just follow it exclusively, obviously that's going to be as bad as just launching yourself into the sun. From the religions of the world and the artifacts of ancient civilizations to the shapes of trees, animals, antlers, and the solar system itself, the unity that gives rise to and drives the universe is reflected everywhere. And that's key. It's reflected everywhere in the forms that it needs to use to make the things that it makes. And then you have to forget about scales. Like, scales seem so impressive to a human that works in the scale of such a tiny sphere of influence in our own lives that we're just staggered by it, but we shouldn't be. Meaning like this comes from the future into the past. The Egyptians buried their kings with their belongings for the afterlife. In the future, they knew that they were producing meanings that would be important. And that's what it's all about, really. And their pyramids reflect this cognitive unification from the diverse theories of the world contained in the brains. Pyramids rising towards the sky, the realm of the sun god, coming to a point from a base that's widely distributed. And so that one's kind of obvious, although people have all kinds of weird ideas about pyramids these days, but it's just because they're kind of lost in the wilderness of symbols, the proliferation of symbols and memes and stuff like that, which can be deadly. It's almost like sometimes people forge their lives out of disease organisms, memes that are actually going to cause problems in the long run, but they serve functions like tools to get them what they want in the short run, so they just follow them, but it's deadly. So it's like the zombie apocalypse in that sense, that this disease got in their brains and they eat other people's brains so they can't move closer to truth, because now their brains are infected by the same memes. But these are all like information pieces and stuff. So if there were to be like an Archangel Michael, his sword would be like order of higher truth and meaning, according to which lesser truths cannot prevail, especially ones that are used to manipulate, because no deception works unless it has some elements of truth to it, obviously. But if you take a bunch of elements of truth out of context and you use those like a pirate, Like a pirate ship has a skull and bones thing. And that's kind of symbolic too, because the skull and crossbones is symbolic of what happens if you interrupt the lines of gold and commerce that are leading to something higher in its organization, and you use them just for your proximal needs and wants, so you can be like, arg, me matey, I want a keg of ale, let's take over this ship that's bringing gold to the king, or whatever, you know. Gold being like a symbol of sun god and stuff. But I guess you could read like Treasure Island and stuff and understand that better. People's personalities. Wait, where am I? Oh, okay. You can see things that work in the unused DNA of the prokaryotes that is silent, which is used only later in the eukaryotic cells further along the evolutionary ladder. Something silent made useful and new by the advance of life that was already there before it was needed. Of course, this pattern is there when you see new meaning in things as you learn in a single lifetime, but also over time. You start seeing the meanings that were there since the beginning of time. And that's echoed in the movie 2001: Space Odyssey, where you find something buried on the moon from millions of years before that helps you advance in your evolution. That's why that was such a great work of art. Enhance the meaning of things. Something silent made useful and new by the advance of life that was already there before it was needed. There is evidence that feathered descendants of dinosaurs existed before birds came and developed the ability to fly, which would make feathers so important to their survival. This is called exaptation and seems to be analogous here to the selection out of a field of possibilities like that existed at the time of the Big Bang. The specific natural laws as we see them today. The future makes these more coherent. People's personalities form the same way. We say a baby has potential, but that you cannot teach an old dog new tricks because they're dogs, mainly. They don't think like we do. We all know people who try to settle on a way of coping with life that seems to work at an earlier time, but later can cause all kinds of trouble. I guess the moral here is to have more faith and to trust ambiguity and others more. That which would bring about life happens before the life actually arises in the universe. And it's important to understand the meaning of this as a symbol. This echo of general form is the logos echo. In formative causation fashion, the future makes attractors upon which the choices of life and chance flow to ensure that life continues into the future. But we only see time flowing in one direction, but through meaning we can see it flowing in the other direction, so to speak. It's invisible, but we see it. So it does coexist with us. It's separated by this pattern of information. That is the only possible way to make sense of the major lines of data in the world in combination with the phenomena of consciousness. This theory explains what we mean when we say someone left a job or school to follow their heart. That's why freedom is important. I've talked about that already. One other contingency to survival also existed. The patterns which would elucidate and teach subsequent generations of organisms also had to exist in other life forms and in the universe. So, all life, all creatures, all existence is actually one body. If you look from completely beyond time, and its head always exists in the future, beyond the space-time of the present. That is why it's like kind of like when you're standing upright as a human, you think something and then your body moves and you move towards it because you see something that's possible by your senses or your thought. Like right now I can't see the city of Chicago, but I know I could go there. I know the road I'm sitting on. I could drive and make the right turns and reach Chicago. And my head knows that, not my body. And then my body would follow what was conceived in my head. So it's very much like now when people talk about having visualization boards and stuff, they're absolutely right. And that's how the universe works and how God does it. So why not? And if you look at the meaning of the universe, you'd understand that. I think it's one of the reasons it's coming out now, because I've put these ideas out there and talked about it so much, it's starting to hit the subconscious realm and come into existence in people's minds. That's why you cannot find an ultimate theory of everything in physics. It is in the future and in our minds, unity and consciousness. And we're not looking at the symbols the right way. We talked about that too. So we build our future in the present by seeking knowledge and truth, and we battle the shadow of the future paths of our demise, found in evil, lies, regressive forces, addictions, and patterns like that, where the future takes root. Any of those things are potentials for us to be thrown off the path, taken somewhere else, because all the world is a stage, and it is telling us about the future. That's the thing that Shakespeare didn't really understand. Or it's like when you learn enough, you can understand statements like that at a higher level, because they're meaningful on many levels. And that's something I want to stop and talk about for a second, because if something is meaningful on many levels, then we know it's like a great truth or wisdom, because it's meaningful on so many levels and it takes on more meaning. Like at the trailhead here at Baylands National Park, it says, "We shall come to the place from whence we set out and know it for the first time and after all of our travels." And that's very much like what's happening with the universe right now, is we're going to start understanding the universe and seeing it in the way it really is for the first time as a result of these ideas. So, sunlight kills vampires, which are the living dead future that literally steal away our light and life. Like any other environmental challenge an organism might face, which actually serves to drive us forward if we react properly. And that's the thing about any of these things. Instead of just fearing them or thinking how scary it is, we should understand that, well, what we're feeling is there for a reason. It's symbolic. All this stuff is symbolic. Dang, I'm gonna be able to see. So, our enemies help us grow. I wrote this 20 years ago, but in the intervening time, like the last couple of years, I found out that the Dalai Lama said there are no enemies, only really good teachers. I thought I'd add that in there. So even that, I've got a reference now. The Dalai Lama, what could be better than that? So there you go. I don't know why people won't listen to me. But any general knows that a common enemy brings even diverse factions together. Programs and patterns that have worked in the past are growing obsolete, and so we see our demise played out in the proliferation of nuclear weapons and the disillusionment of people with religions, etc. Or, on the other hand, their insistence on their own religion over others. Or that they're somehow singled out and special because of their religion, when it's like the blind man and the elephant. We must transcend our adversarial programs. Power goes to those people and civilizations that love truth. In the way that I define it, not Donald Hoffman's, I had to repeat that. Pirates with skull and crossbone flags intercepted paths of gold accumulating in unified places under kings. Gold is a symbol of truth and the sun at the same time. The Egyptians thought it was the substance of the sun god and stuff like that. It is eternal and easy to shape into useful things. It is weighty, so it's subject to gravity more, meaning. Diamonds are carbon shaped by intense temperatures and pressures into highly ordered crystals that go from black to clear and sparkling with rainbow fire, a metaphor for the journey of carbon-based life forms on Earth. The destruction and sacrifice of past life forms in the age of dinosaurs provides the fossil fuels upon which we have built our cities, which now reach toward the sky. We find gold in veins underground from the past and shape it into symbols of the future, just like we do with knowledge using science. We refine it and mine it and pan for it. Truth eliminates the dangers to our survival that take shape in the present. I just want to say one more thing, is that when we're mining like underground in the dark and stuff, like in Minecraft, and there's zombies outside in the dark, it's like, it fits so well, all of these ideas. I just love it. I also like to play Minecraft. Probably a bit too much, but it's fun. Truth eliminates the dangers to our survival that take shape in the present. These are echoes of the future that their current actions will bring, reaching into the past to exist in the present. All wars, all conflicts, all evil fears the day that sunlight is poured into their dark places. don't really fear it. They're just going to be gone when it happens. This is that day, and this is the definition of what is meant religiously by the light of the world. The meaning behind all things, not just one person's meaning, and not just the meaning that I want to be there, and I'm going to use my political power to make be there, but freedom, freely seen enlightenment. The unity which fires up the engines of God. Of course, we should not be fooled by the symbols, like gold, of these things. They only reflect something else that could not otherwise be represented in this material place. Truth is written over and over all through reality. One of the features of the Quran in Islam is the rhythmic quality to the verse. It is apparently to be read and experienced, which serves to probably prime people to perceive the rhythm of the Logos echo threaded throughout the universe. I never set out to be religious in this, but when the rhythmic waves of meaning came over me early on, I just surfed them into the beach and found these things waiting for me, this coherence, later. I started out as a psychologist, then a brain scientist, and a consciousness researcher, not officially a theologian, an archaeologist, a linguist, a physicist, or a biologist, although I read widely in all those areas a lot. Earlier, I nearly flunked out of high school, partly because I stayed home to read physics books. I was in the psychology book club, the physics book club, which didn't seem to fit together, but now it fits together perfectly. Physics, psychology too. And once I stayed home, it's kind of funny because psychology was like, they always thought they were more into real science compared to physics, but really it's the other way around. Sorry. Once I stayed at home a whole week to read The Lord of the Rings, to be perfectly honest, which was really interesting. I love stories. And I think reading stories, you can just read story after story after story and get this stuff, because it'll tell you because a good author uses the symbols in the right way, and then they become more engaging. That's how they become engaging, by understanding them. That's why if you're a writer, understanding how the world works in this way is like the key to making like gripping dramas. And I used to watch TV shows and stories, and I'm like, they got the story wrong. What the hell are they doing? That story is wrong. I mean, it's fun to watch, but it's absolutely wrong. It's like not how things are actually working. And so once you see that, then you can write better stories that are more engaging. And when a story is wrong, it's never going to be a classic or something that's going to draw in that many listeners and stuff, or readers. So the point is, this stuff only serves to be coherent instead of problematic in retrospect, only because the place should be just place without the D, only because of the place I have reached now in my thinking. That's how I've been able to bring together so many disparate elements into this theory, exactly what the universe is, life is, humanity, what the universe, life, and humanity itself has been doing, it turns out. In my 4 previous posters on this topic, which I mentioned earlier, that website is no longer operative. It was 20 years ago, and I pretty much so bad off financially I could not afford to have any more URLs, because they cost like $15-20 a year. Yeah, it's that bad. So I had to get rid of it, and it was there for a long time. Well, actually no, the Logos Echo one was there for a long time, and then the Mindspring account, those guys took down my website because I had some web space with my email, and just like 2 years ago they took down my website. It was on there, but I saved everything from it. But anyway, I presented in 2001 these 4 posters, and then the summary poster, which makes 5. 1, the likely cellular candidates for how this unity might be modeled in brains and glial cells operating beyond the space-time, which is therefore only inherent in neurons, which I still think is the case. 2, how we can get beyond the naturally limited worldview we are presented with by the exigencies of our biology. Total Donald Hoffman stuff. 3, a fuller discussion, but it was way before he started this stuff. And that's just one aspect, obviously, of this theory. So I could use him for a reference now. And like when I first sent that paper in 1994, they were saying I needed references like these, so now I have them. 3, a fuller discussion of the Logos Echo of unity in the universe, which I in my 3rd paper. how the logo cycle works and what it looks like. And then the fourth paper was more tangible evidence from this new methodology I invented. And I thought about this a long time. I taught experimental methodology at Emory when I was in graduate school in the early 90s. And so I thought about this new way that you could use to understand these complex and rare events that revolve around consciousness, that you see through meaning, that use infinite possibility, which is let in through the aperture of the unity of consciousness, to organize things in the world into meaningful coherence. In other words, just to put it like explicitly, I'm trying to be more explicit. Nobody understands what I say usually. So I did this hybrid methodology where you use introspective methodologies, and I tried to go to a school when I was in Tennessee. I went to the University of Tennessee, talked to some professors there that were talking about meaning and this introspective methodologies, because I wanted to use my introspective methodology there, but it didn't seem like they would want to do exactly what I was doing, and that was my big problem. Nobody was doing what I was doing. But that was like in way before I wrote this paper. But anyway, this methodology is where you introspect, and then you take each element and try to investigate it as thoroughly as possible. It's hard to grasp onto these meanings. They tend to be fleeting because they aren't directly relevant to our life. And like I said, a lot of people don't see these things because they're too busy on a schedule doing what they need to do to survive. But I did it anyway. And then you take each element, and as you add them up, it becomes a lower and lower probability of happening by chance. So like we throw dice once, as opposed to throwing a dice 5 times and come up with 5 ones. Each time you throw the dice, you have a certain probability of getting a 1. But if you say I want to throw 100 ones in a row, the probability of that set of things happening in a row in that way is much lower than just one of them. So I thought by the time you get a few of those, the probability becomes so much lower when they all line up that you can see that it's something that is created by this unity of meaning in reference to the things that keep us alive in the universe. So it's like a definition of what life is that actually fits and works. It's very difficult to come up with a definition of life as opposed to something that's like a machine or something. So anyway, that's what I did. I came up with this methodology, and now this guy and I presented it at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And then there's a professor there at the University of Arizona in Tucson who wrote a book called Super Synchronicity, who used my same method and idea maybe 3 or 4 years later. But he didn't cite me as a reference, which I was just like very disappointed in that. But anyway, at least the book is out, and you can look at that. It's called Super Synchronicity. He doesn't relate it to things I do and doesn't show it as showing like how the universe works, but you can definitely get the idea of what's going on with synchronicities and stuff. So these ideas greatly increase the information available in the universe. These ideas answer many, many outstanding questions people have had for a long, long time, such as why we are here, where we are going, where we have come from, and what is the objective basis for morality. That's very important, because now we can understand morality much, much better. And unlike Sam Harris says, we can definitely straighten out our morality with science and get it from understanding the meanings of things using science that were objective about it and fair and free. So there's really no morality without science, honestly. Why are there religions, and are they just fantasy? What is God? What is evil? Why are there civilizations? And I talk about in some of my later writings about how some work done at Los Alamos shows that cities are organized optimally for the exchange of information and not for the exchange of material resources, which again, support for this theory, everything should be like that. Eventually we're going to find that the most important thing is the information and the meaning, not the material resources, like past evolutionary thinking has said. So that's more evidence. And I predicted all these things with this theory, it would be that way. So why are there civilizations at all? To bring people together in knowledge, to build our future survival, to share information for higher meaning. Why do people, obviously, I need to be explicit because people don't make these leaps, I don't know why, but why do people build skyscrapers towards the sky, future? And we call the floors stories. Each story builds us closer to truth. And that's what I was saying, the more stories you read, the closer you get to truth. The sky, the future, the realm of the sun, the unity that gives life, you get the idea. Why do they climb mountains? How can consciousness be salient in our experience, yet so elusive to our brain science? And it's because it's time shifted, it's coming from the other direction in time. Science studies stuff from the other way. And then this climbing mountain things, I was going to this Everest cuisine place in Mountain View, and then I was walking around and I found one of those tiny libraries, and there was like a tote underneath it. I'd gone through the books in the tiny library and I thought, well, I'm just going to check in this tote. I popped the lid on it, and right on top there was like a magazine, National Geographic, with Sir Edmund Hillary on the front of it. Thought that was really, really cool. It was an article about his Everest ideas and stuff. Why do they climb mountains? Definitely not because it's theirs, because it's symbolic. How can consciousness be so salient in our experience yet so elusive to our brain science? I just said that. Why did Democritus talk about atoms thousands of years before we were actually at a point where we could prove their existence with science? Why did Leonardo da Vinci draw pictures of helicopters, tanks, and flying machines well before they were possible? Why did Stephen Romer become Stephanie in the future? Why did Stephen Romer talk about all of these things 20 years ago, and only now do we have all of these investigators working on various aspects of the idea, and now I can show you what the reality is? Why did Leonardo da Vinci draw pictures of helicopters, tanks, and flying machines well before they were possible? The only benefit right now for me, the only thing that's different is back then they had to wait hundreds of years, but the information explosion is exponential, and the advances that we're making are exponential. I think there were some of these writers like, was it Malcolm Gladwell, or one of these guys, how information advances exponential. So I benefit from that. It was only 20 years until I could see all the things happening that I had predicted. So that was really cool. And before that, when I was a kid with the computer and things. So how do we get ideas out of the blue? Why do we like challenges? Why do we value truth? What are dreams and what do they tell us? Why do we call the ideas of dreamers pie in the sky? Why do people build walls and make war with each other? Why are things beautiful? Why do new theories reinterpret past data? One of the things about walls and stuff is that people think that it's like they need to stop other memes and cultures from coming in and ruining the path they're trying to build, the towers they're building, so to speak. But the thing is, you have to understand that you shouldn't be afraid of any stories, because we're all in this together. We're like all one. So those different cultures and things aren't really a threat. And the more you learn about them, the closer you get to the unity of all these things, like the blind man and the elephant. So why are things beautiful? Why do new theories reinterpret past data and keep us moving forward? That's what evolution does. Reinterprets. Why do symbols have meaning and attraction for us? Why were there pyramids on 2 different continents? What does the shape of Buddhist stupas really mean? What is enlightenment? Why do cathedrals or churches have spires that reach for the sky? And why does that give us a religious feeling? What truly is a theory of everything, and why did the dinosaurs really become extinct? Not the mechanics of it. That's not the why. Why is the theory of everything elusive to physicists? What is heaven, and what do religious people mean by terms like he ascended to heaven, or the kingdom of God on earth, or the source of all learning is knowledge of God from Baha'u'llah, something like that, or self-realization? Why do animals assume the shapes and forms they do besides for obvious utilitarian reasons? Why are they simply beautiful? Why did ancient peoples sometimes use drugs to see their gods? Why is coffee or tea dark, bitter, and motivating and anxiety-producing? Why is the shape of a tree such a haunting metaphor for so many developmental evolutionary processes? Fruits are like the meaning we eat off of the tree. It's symbolic. So, there you go. Why is the shape of a tree such a haunting metaphor for so many different developmental evolutionary processes? Knowledge, life, phylogeny, family. What is the real nature and real danger of memes to humanity? Confusing the truth, promoting stasis and theories, which should be mobile and free. We should see Jordan Peterson to talk. His maps of meaning is good for that. Nietzsche said God is dead, but he also said the voice of beauty speaks softly. It steals into only the most awakened souls, which means exactly the opposite in this theoretical context. And really, God, Nietzsche wasn't saying God was dead, but that we killed him with reason, and that there would be a lot of bloodshed. And this is all why, obviously. So, and then, of course, Nietzsche went crazy because he was almost like a symbol of these things at war in him that were happening in the world. So that should tell us a lot about the nature of mental illness and memes as well, what they can and can't do, and how they can be deadly. What gives rise to life when the probabilities are so stacked against it? What sets the natural laws and constants of nature at their present values? Is there one unified way to conceptualize the otherwise overwhelming information that now exists in our information age that will carry us into the future and simplify all teachings? What breeds fire into the equations? Paraphrase Stephen Hawking's famous question. You could even look at all universes as being like the same universe, separated with time and space, and then you could look at all galaxies that same way. All solar systems, just their variation on solar systems and stuff until one gets it right. Physicists may find this mirror universe of unity mirroring the Big Bang in their experience eventually, or a structure like the spiral connecting things. I was thinking like in a black hole. I've been trying to work on that lately. There must be a way that information can flow backward and or is related instantaneously in the universe. And we do already have that. It's like the entanglement, particle entanglement, points to that. The end of the search for truth. Also light, because light obviously travels at the speed of light, at the speed limit of the universe. And if you do that, you're going to be moving forward in time, like instantaneously, at the culmination of the universe, which would be meaning or unity. And the other way in time, of course, it would be the Big Bang. So if you look both ways in times, light is like this connector. Very symbolic. Shit, I'm getting tired. I'll keep going though. Maybe I'll continue this in a little bit. So I'm stopping right now at Nietzsche and mental illness and stuff. So that's it for today. I'll probably do more tomorrow on this. He's so cute. He's eating more peanuts. Then he goes and buries them. Or she does.